it's just really interesting, actually, just following on from what Adrian was saying. I remember it's like, you know, when you feel you've been in a job too long. I remember, I think it was 7 years ago, strongly arguing against grading in a department meeting, using all the, you know, assessment for learning stuff. As soon as you grade them, they no longer listen to the comments and the rich sort of target setting that you need to do. And then I've been totally involved in the grading process and seeing, I suppose, the benefits as a program leader of having the numbers, being able to track the numbers, and now coming back round to that thinking about, but actually, you know, again, are they just obsessing about whether they're grade 1, 2 or 3? I think the thing for me is about having a really supportive process with clear targets for improvement. But equally, even if we have minimum expectations at review points, ensuring that those trainees who can go further are pushed to go further, that we don't say, well, that's the minimum, so that's all that you do. But it's really, as I say, it's that thing in education, isn't it? Everything comes in cycles, doesn't it? You know, so I better not stick around for about another 7 years, because we'll be back to grading again at that point. So yeah, so we're just having a little look at school-based training 1 expectations. I think it's really interesting because we brought in this new way of reviewing progress, and then on top of that we've got COVID and the delay to placement. So I think, I suppose, following on from what Stacey was saying, I think we need to get our heads around that when people are on our course, actually it's not a year-long course, but it's a 9-month long course, and they've got that 9 or 10 months to reach the teaching standards. The complicating factor is the fact that we've got currently 2 modules, school-based training 1 and school-based training 2, and they either pass or fail that first module, that first period of training. And I think that was initially introduced to actually ensure that people who would never, ever, ever make it as a teacher didn't waste their time for the rest of the year, or waste school's times for the rest of the year. So that cut-off at Christmas was always only ever meant to be for a very, very, very tiny minority of people who you're just thinking, not in a million years will this person ever be able to be. There's some people who just haven't got the skill set, and no matter how much we support them, are not going to get there. Now, as I say, my experience of doing this, that's, you know, single figures, 1 or 2, you know, across a programme. But over the years, somehow, because we've got that break, I think that we've become more judgmental rather than supportive, and perhaps that's something as a university overall we need to look at that cut-off point again. They have got the whole year to reach the teaching standards. I think we need to bear that in mind with our trainees, and some of them are just slow starters, aren't they, and need an awful lot more support. So just looking in terms of for this year, with an even shorter school-based training 1, that first formative review is literally, you know, are they a professional person who's interacting with school? You know, are they turning up on time? Are they polite and respectful? Are they, you know, forming good relationships? At that point, their progress against the teaching standards, I don't think we even should be considering, because there'll have been 2 weeks induction and 2 weeks, you know, having picked up some teaching. And equally, when we get to the summative review, again, I think that needs to be much lighter touch. It needs to be, well, are they developing against those teachers' standards? Okay. Now, just looking at that, in terms of how all this is set up, I know you've got another graphic there, Jenny, haven't you, which might help us, just to show you that timeline for them. So course begins, well, they enrol on the 2nd of September. Then the university teaching begins, and that period is longer than usual. During the preparation for placement, the sort of things we'll be doing with them in university are subject knowledge, professional studies, which is focused more on the standards, that professional practice we talked about, which is that more deeper contextualisation of what they're doing. We'll be introducing the trainee development space and talking to them about how they use that. During that period of time, there'll be communication with you as SMCs and mentors about those trainees. They will do an initial needs analysis with us, and also a subject knowledge audit, which is something they keep returning to during the year. So we get the trainees to self-audit their subject knowledge, their confidence about that, and use that to set targets in terms of developing that. October the 12th, as we said, there'll be that 2 weeks of induction into placement, and we would like to focus on the induction booklet has been rewritten as well. There's more detail now. There are more templates, again, because we're trying to stimulate that sort of interaction that's required as a result of the ITT core content framework in terms of input, observation, reflection, evaluation. Okay. At that stage, there'll be as well, preparing for picking up some teaching. Hopefully they'll have their timetable sorted. They'll be doing their class profiles, which was new last year. That before they start teaching, the trainees have got gathered evidence and information about the classes that they're teaching in the class profiles, and also they need to have a scheme of work or a short-term plan. They need to know where they're starting and where they're going to with that class. They will need help with lesson planning. I mean, as you'll have seen from the schedule, they've only had 2 inputs on that. You can tell someone how to lesson plan. It doesn't mean they know how to plan a lesson. So they will need continual support with that. We then have got them starting teaching on the 2nd of November. Now, because this is a shorter placement this time, we would expect them to pick up their 8 hours of teaching progressively and be teaching the 8 hours by the end of the placement, maybe for the last couple of weeks. So as you can see, this is the expectations are less than we would normally have for an SBT1 because they've got less time with you. So it's more of a starter placement, I would say. Okay. I'm just looking at that. Once they're into their teaching, they've got their weekly mentor reviews. They've got their professional studies tasks that they need to be doing. Your SMC program. You need to build in some observations there. Really, what we're really pushing this year as well is we would like, both in school-based training 1 and school-based training 2, for each trainee to share at least one class with their mentor, Key Stage 3 before Christmas, Key Stage 4 afterwards, and work in a much more collaborative fashion. That some schools do this already, but this is, I would say, is a requirement now that a trainee works closely either with their mentor or an experienced host teacher, and initially sits and discusses with that mentor their scheme of work, the short-term plans, how they're addressing their teaching, how they're grouping their children, what the barriers to learning are, how they're assessing, and then gradually takes up elements of that teaching. So we're looking at a different model there to the passing the class over to the trainee. We're looking at working side by side with a really experienced practitioner and unpicking those lessons and learning. We've then got review point 1, which, as we said, is going to be a very, very light touch. Are they getting on with it, really? Obviously, some discussions around the standards would be great, but not grading against the standards. And then I'm going to talk to you about subject moderation in a moment, and then we get to the second review point. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing just for a second.